Jack the Ripper. Ever heard of him? He's only the most famous serial killer of all times, rightly so. He committed gruesome acts that scarred the Whitechapel community. Those crimes were never solved and the public never understood their nature. His motive was never found. To this day, we don't know who hides beneath the chilling nickname of Jack the Ripper. Today we, Genevieve,
William.
Harsh.
And me, Zakaria.
shall shine a light on this unsolved mystery.
The Whitechapel district was quite a disturbed neighborhood. There was many other crimes done against prostitutes, but none as disturbing as the series of 5 canonical victims.
London. The year was 1888. On August 31st at 3:40 in the morning, on Bucks Row, Marianne Nichols was found dead with her throat cut. Her abdomen was mutilated. She was a 43-year-old prostitute. That night, we knew that she already had clients. She was last seen at 2:30 looking for a final customer. Unfortunately for her, 1 hour later she was discovered, dead, lying on the street. At first, the crime was classified as a common robbery gone wrong.
8 days later, Jack the Ripper struck again. Annie Chapman was found murdered in the backyard of 39 Hanbury Street. Unlike Nichols' murder, we don't know what events led to her death. She, too, was found severely mutilated. Since some of her organs were missing, we know that the killer had some sort of knowledge about human anatomy. The proximity of the two murders led to the conclusion that the murders were connected, and so the assumption of a serial killer rose.
The last and most gruesome of the 5 canonical crimes was the murder of Mary Jane Kelly. That November 8th, she was found in a little room rented on 13 Miller's Court. For reasons of respect of the deceased, and because of the academic context, we will not describe the wounds inflicted on Kelly. But keep in mind that the security provided by the room allowed Jack the Ripper to operate at full intensity, shielded from the public eye.
All the victims had similarities. Firstly, they were all killed at night. Secondly, they were all prostitutes with drinking problems. Most importantly, before being prostitutes, they all came from a high social class before falling in the decades of alcoholism and prostitution. Except for Strike, the third victim, whose murder was interrupted, they were all severely mutilated with some piece of their body missing. From this, we can conclude that Jack the Ripper has some kind of hatred against prostitution. Due to the concept of sexuality of that time, is it possible that Jack the Ripper disliked the idea of such sexual intercourse outside the boundaries of marriage?
During the murders, police and other investigators received letters signed Jack the Ripper. That information got leaked to the press, which made the citizen aware of the Whitechapel's murderer's name.
When Stride and Eddowes were killed, a piece of Eddowes' blood-soaked clothes was found next to some kind of anti-Semitic graffiti full of grammatical mistakes. The police debated the connection with the crime and concluded that it was purely coincidental and that they shouldn't take it into account. The graffiti was erased, and to this day, we don't know if it was the work of Jack the Ripper.
With all the information gathered, we can understand that the Ripper was a local since he knew how to properly navigate through all the Whitechapel districts. Also due to the brutal nature of the murder and the organs that the murderer took, the inspector in charge assumed that the killer had some basic knowledge of human or animal anatomy. This is what made the police suspect medical students, but they later on established that the butcher could have had the same knowledge and anatomy to be able to commit those gruesome acts.
This brings us to our first suspect. He was a Jew named John Pizer. He worked as a bookmaker in Whitechapel. He was referred as the Leather Apron The nickname comes from a letter apron found beside the second body. He was arrested even though the investigating inspector said that there was no evidence against him. Later on, Pizer was cleared from suspicion because he had alibis for two of the murders. And even though he was cleared, that event proves the racial tension of the neighborhood at that time. The second one was once a surgeon in the Russian Navy by the name of Michael Ostrog. He was in an asylum before the murders and couldn't provide a strong enough alibi for his whereabouts during the time of the crimes. Later on, author Philippe Suggen found prison records that put Ostrog in a French prison during the Ripper murders.
The final suspect was a man named Aaron Kosminski. He was a Polish Jew who was known for his hatred towards women, especially prostitutes. Also, he matched the description of a man during the night of the double murder. Kosminski spent a lot of time in asylum before and after the murder, but not during. Recently, his name made the headlines due to the new DNA evidence that was later on dismissed.
There is another, more believable suspect though, Joseph Barnett. He was a fisherman who lived with the fifth victim. They were roommates, but he thought otherwise.
There are many more theories, suspects, and clues about who Jack the Ripper is. People have made a living investigating this case. There are so many things to add. That's why those murders are unsolved to this date. In conclusion, Jack the Ripper, if this is even his name, is a mystery. An unsolvable persona that lives in the imagination of many generations of Londoners. Jack, him, and his crimes will be forever known but always unsolved. But it is fun to try to break the case. And you, who do you think he is?